Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this review, I am very happy to be showing you the SH Figuarts Super Saiyan God, Super Saiyan Vegeta. We're still going with the double naming. Let's just call it Super Saiyan Blue. Let's make that official, come on. That's way better than saying the same words twice in the name. But, this figure, almost completely a reissue. But, it's somehow significantly better than the first? Question mark? Hashtag what? No, I'm just kidding, I don't hashtag, that was just a joke. But anyway, it's really good for what it is, and still has a few serious problems just like it did the first time we bought it. But there is some new stuff to talk about, so that's kind of awesome. And it's blue-haired Vegeta, so that in itself is kind of awesome. So let's go ahead and get it off the stand and take a closer look. This guy stands, including his hair, about 15.5 centimeters. If I had to estimate where the top of his actual head is, it's about 13 for scaling purposes. That's going to make him about 5 inches, a little bit over maybe, and then closer to 6 with the hair, just so you have an idea. Before we get into anything else, let me go ahead and set him right here, get the cat hair out of the way, and then we're just going to do some real quick size comparisons, in case you're wondering what he looks like up against his original counterpart with the bigger, poofier hair, but mostly the same body. There you go. They are essentially the same, of course. And here we have Mr. Ruffle Cuffs. That's not Ruffle Shoulder. Ruffle, I couldn't think of a clever name. I'm sorry, I failed. I'll leave it in there though. And then we also, of course, have everybody's favorite human-shaped vegetable. So I think that's, that's reasonably in scale. I'd say he's shorter than Gogeta, so that's good. And he's significantly shorter than Broly. We know these Dragon Ball figure arts definitely skew towards center more often than not, so it's kind of something you just have to live with. I like the fact that it is pretty darn close though, so that's good. I'll take it. That's fine. If you want it to be more precise, well, you're gonna end up wanting to pay a lot more money, so I'm willing to make that sacrifice. So this guy, like I said, basically the exact same figure as before, a few different changes. It looks significantly better. One of the biggest faults for this guy when he released was that there was only some minimal shading on the blue, which was okay, but the chest armor just looked super cheap, which I know you can't see very well. Go check out my review if you want to. I'll put it in the top corner there. But the chest armor had no shading on it at all. And this one doesn't either, but it's got an extra color in there. This one was just solid white, which made it look super cheap. And this one has the gray in there, which does bring out a ton more detail, because of course you have the white paneling or white lining around the gray panels. And it's very important to note, the paint that's here is much cleaner than was on that figure. Clean paint, even though minimal, makes it look so much better. If you only have a little bit of paint and it's a little fuzzy, it really detracts from the figure. This one's paint is top notch, aces. It's so good, very nicely done. I don't see any shading anywhere on this guy, which is definitely a bummer, but being a much darker color, you don't need it. I mean, you don't need it subjectively. You don't notice it because it's already really, really dark, so it's fine as far as I'm concerned. And that's the thing. The darker something is, the less you'll notice shading on it. So, that's okay. He is also mostly a pretty flat, or at least matte figure. You can see his thighs are bouncing some light back at the camera. That's mostly just because of the harsh studio lights, and he's not perfectly flat. To the naked eye and without studio lights, he's gonna look really nice. He doesn't have a glossy finish at all, so that's good. Especially the painted armor here, very nice finish. Very, very nicely done. So aesthetically speaking, this guy is wonderful. His hair is the metallic coloring again. I'm starting to like it more and more. I am still partial, I think, to this sort of styling where it's just painted like a nice matte color with subtle shading. This is basically the perfect example of how I'd like their hair to be done. But if they're gonna go metallic, I don't think it's absolutely terrible. I get that they do it to kind of make it look like light is bouncing off or emitting from the hair. So I get it. It's okay by me. I'm not against it. I like it both ways, and they did a good job here, so that's fine. They did a nice job with the face. It is, of course, a little bit softer than it is on the box or in the prototype images, the test shots and final paint masters and whatnot. But with the shading in the ears and the paint job on the face, it is definitely better than a lot of people made it out to be. I think it looks just fine. Obviously, it could look better, but it looks well within the realm of acceptable. I'm very okay with it. So final verdict on the aesthetic, I'm going to give this guy an 8 out of 10. A little bit of shading wouldn't hurt. I think that'd be all right. And I guess that's pretty much it. It does look really... Oh, by the way, his proportions, I don't know if we talked about this on the original release, but the proportions on this guy are just stunning. They're great. And his shoulders are nice and big and bowling ball like they are in Dragon Ball, typically speaking, so that looks good. And because of the way it's engineered, you can kind of keep him up a little bit higher than you would normally for a human, and that it just looks so good. It's really nicely done. He's got nice thickness for his torso. Shoulders are probably a little bit far forward, but all in all, this guy is really well designed in terms of overall proportions. So yeah, the aesthetics are really nice on this guy. As far as accessories go, we'll start with the heads. We have the blue hair head with the neutral face, which comes on him in the package. We have one blue-haired face where he's just gritting his teeth, and then we have one where he's yelling. Both of those are very nicely done. We do have the ginger head for him as well, still metallic. Not really my favorite look. There's not quite enough metal flake in there. It looks just more like a glossy red until you get pretty close up to it. So it's not bad, but I think it could be better. But he does have one face, and that looks alright. That's like the smirky head. That's okay. As far as hands go, we have the two fist hands, which come on him in the package, one thumbs up hand, two martial arts hands, two clenchy hands, and two wide open hands for various blasts and poses. And then lastly, we do get his crossed arms accessory, and this is really terribly done, terribly painted. It's not very clean at all. You may not notice it as much once it's on him because you're not going to be focusing on it, but the old version is painted significantly better than this one, which is definitely kind of a bummer. So accessory wise, we're missing an effect part, no stand of course, and relatively minimal options. I guess the heads are not bad. Either way, it's about a 7. It's not like you're going to feel like you got cheated, but you're not going to feel particularly thrilled with what you get. So that seems pretty fair to me. As far as the articulation goes, unfortunately, this is the downside for this figure. Not in every way, but in some ways. For the head, I'll pop this off and show you. We do have our little tiny ball hinge in there, and as you can see, there's very little room for wiggle, or you might call it wiggle room. So it can work, it does lean, and it doesn't pop the face off because, okay, so here's the thing. For Gogeta and Gotenks, the reason the face pops off is because they have the joint farther forward. There's no room for this part of the head to move down without it prying itself off. It's farther back on this one, so it doesn't have that issue until you get all the way to the bottom of the range. You can lean the head forward without it doing anything because it's got the hinge farther back. If you go too far, it starts to pry it off. You can see the ear lifting right there. So that's the issue with Gogeta and Gotenks. This guy doesn't have that, so that's definitely a plus. But you still do have minimal range with that little tiny ball hinge, and the ball peg on the top part of it doesn't really afford much. So you're going to spend a lot of time manipulating this hinge rather than just having like a double ball peg, which would work way better. It's functional enough though, so it's not really a downside. It just could be better if they went with that more simple design. Single ball peg for the neck. Mine doesn't move very much at all. I don't know if mine's just tight or if that's just the way it is. It's probably just the way it is. But you can definitely get the head in enough of a pose in most instances where you should be just fine. For the shoulders, we have a ball peg connecting the shoulder to a butterfly joint, which, just like last time, it's not the ugliest butterfly joint in the world, it's just not the most useful. So if you bring the arm forward on its own, that's where it goes. If you use the butterfly joint with it, that's where it goes. It doesn't really afford that much because it's so far, you can even see, it's so far recessed in the chest that even once you pull it out, it's still pretty much still in the chest. I said still twice. So it's not a great butterfly joint, but it doesn't actually hurt anything, so I'll allow it. And you do, like I said, you can leave the shoulders low, or you can bring them up and get that real animated look, and I love that. Of course, you have your full rotation, bicep swivel, the hinge itself works well enough. Not quite horizontal though, definitely could be a little bit better. Double jointed elbow works very nicely, and then for the wrists, you get a little tiny ball hinge, which is fine. They provide enough range, so that's all right. Is that connected on a ball peg? I can't tell if it's actually connected on a ball peg in there, but the ball hinge itself has a little bit of play, almost like a Storm Collectibles figure. Not quite sure about that. I'd have to pull it apart and don't want to risk breaking it. For the torso, we have a ball peg hinge combination. It works well enough. We'll get to this part in a second. You do get side to side lean, which is pretty nice. It's pretty good range. Leaning forward uses that hinge, and you get pretty good lean and no gapping, so I'll take that. And then going backwards, you end up with that. So don't do that. You can leave it squashed down and go backwards, and that's definitely the better option. So the hinge, I'm still not sold on that whole design. I think you can accomplish just as much with a good double ball peg, but the hinge doesn't actually hinder anything in this case, so I'm okay with that. It works well enough, and you do get your rotation out of that. That's pretty good range. For down here, we have another hinge and maybe a ball peg, maybe just a swivel, hard to say, but you do get your swivel. And then you actually do have a hinge that leans it forward and back, which works surprisingly well. So you do that in conjunction with the top joint, and you can bend him over really far. That sounds inappropriate, but it gives good range. I'll take that. And it goes back as well, so you can lean him back pretty far too. I like it. So you're probably wondering what part of this is not good so far. Nothing yet. It's okay. The head's not great, but so far everything's pretty good. But now it is time for the hips, and his hips only go that far out to the side. There's no more range there to be had, which is farther than most figures, but for these guys, you kind of want to be able to do the full split so you can do kicks out to the side and stuff. So it is definitely a little bit more limited in that regard. But here's the other issue. Going forward, what's that now? That's it? Huh? What? Why is that it? What's going on here? It doesn't go any farther forward. You have to use this torso hinge to bring the leg up farther. And even then, you can see the problem. His legs don't have the range they should have. I haven't popped it apart to see what the problem is because I don't want to risk breaking anything, but it doesn't really matter what the problem is because it just doesn't work. So for normal people buying this figure who aren't going to risk modifying things or breaking things, you have very minimal leg range. So any like straight up high kicks going forward, you're going to end up doing most of your posing in the torso, and even then, it's not a high kick. So that's definitely a bummer. He's a little bit more limited than I would prefer in the legs. You do get your thigh swivel in there, and that's good. Double jointed knee still works nicely. And then for the ankles, we still have this god-awful double jointed offset ball peg. It's just, look at that. Look at that. Look at it. What the that's, no. You can't bring the foot down, like bring the toe down without having that. That has gotta be the worst ankle joint I've seen on a high-end figure. It is just terrible. You can bring the foot forward a little bit by doing that, but it's still pretty ugly, and it's totally unnecessary. How did they figure that this was the best option? I have no idea. It is just awkward as hell. You do get a decent enough lean to the side if you... I guess it's decent enough. It's better than none, but it's still pretty goofy. And then we do have new feet, by the way, but toe hinge is, it's okay. It's fine. So yeah, these ankles are still janky as all heck. Super janky ankles. Why are they doing that? They know better. They do better. They have done better consistently on many figures. I don't know what they're doing here. So, anyway, final verdict for the articulation. God, this figure is just really, really good looking. I love it. Anyway, final verdict on the articulation for this guy. Almost everything is really good, or at least acceptable. But then we come to the hips, which are highly limited, and the ankles, which are still janky as hell. So, final verdict for these articulations. That's not how I say that normally. 7 out of 10 articulations, plural. What a silly guy. Oh man, I need more sleep. I think I'm dying. Anyway, it's not great articulation overall, but in some cases it's really good. So I think you'll probably be okay with it if you're not into like doing super high kicks all the time. You'll be all right because most of it's pretty good. All right, guys, final verdict on this figure. I find it significantly better than the first release, if only for the aesthetic. Part of that is just the color combination is much more visually appealing and easier to pull off with less paint, like as in no shading. And then the hair is shiny. No, I don't know. Whether you like this one more than the other one is mostly subjective, except it does have a better paint job overall in terms of actual placing the paint on the figure. Less shading, but better paint quality. So I'm going to give this guy a final verdict of 8 out of 10. I really, really like it overall. We do have some significant limitations, but this guy is going to stand out on your Dragon Ball shelf as being one of the better looking figures. The clean paint on this chest is just, it's a beacon to look at it. Like, hey, look at me. I'm really well executed. And so there you go. I love this, and I think you will too. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please do give it a thumbs up. And if you didn't, well, go ahead and give it a thumbs down. That's okay too. And if you haven't subscribed, you might want to consider it because I do have thousands of videos already on the channel and new ones coming out just about every single day. So make sure you come back for all of that good stuff. And in the meantime, well, keep collecting.